I used to scoff at the idea of ghosts. Nothing could stay hidden for so long without being recorded by now. I mean, come on. How could there be no credible evidence or better recordings than those old cell phones from 2010? So, the tales about Deadbeats Drop never really got under my skin. Despite everyone insisting it was haunted and dangerous, there wasn't any solid reason to believe them. I'm from Sherman, Vermont, a little-known ghost town about a 45-minute drive from Montpelier. Chances are you haven't heard of it. You could breeze through the entire town in 10 minutes. With a modest population of around 4,000, Sherman never had anything notable to attract tourists. The only thing you might have heard about is Deadbeats Drop. At first glance, there wasn't much to write home about. A tall hill in the woods, gazing over the White River. It had a steep drop, about 100 feet above the water, with a picturesque waterfall to the west, neither too loud to disrupt nor too distant to ignore. It was a charming spot for picnics, dates, and maybe even proposals, save for one grim detail. The suicides. Since the 1600s, Deadbeats Drop had a dark reputation for its numerous mysterious suicides. It began with colonial expansion when a group of Abenaki Indians reportedly jumped off the hill into the river rather than be driven from their homeland. Legend has it, the place has been cursed ever since. The veracity of that tale and many other old suicide stories is uncertain, but there's no disputing the death of Edward Bond in October 1970, found lifeless at the river's base. Edward was a draft dodger on a desperate journey to Canada, cornered by the police less than 100 miles from the border. His long trek from Florida had come to this. Facing either prison or the horrors of the Vietnam War, he chose to jump. Then, in 1986, another boy named Matthew May ended his life on that same tragic hill. Not much is known about him. He was a solitary figure, weary of living. And in 2008, about a decade ago, a girl vanished after her last known visit to the jump, although her body was never found. The unsettling tally of suicides turned the place into a hub for ghost stories and paranormal whispers. The lore suggested that those with no hope left, deadbeats, went there to bid farewell to the cruel world, their spirits bound to the spot, ready to push any who ventured too close. But as I mentioned, I never bought into ghost stories. In fact, the place's eerie reputation suited me perfectly, offering a sanctuary where I could be alone undisturbed. I often went there to sit on the grass, listen to the waterfall, and write. Poems, stories, personal reflections. It didn't matter. At Deadbeats Drop, inspiration was always within reach. And it wasn't like I had anything better to do. I worked at a grocery store called Shaw's, but since most of the employees were breadwinners, they got most of the hours. I was lucky to work 3 shifts a week. Both my parents worked all day and weren't the most congenial when they were around. And my only friend was Alice, if you could even call her that. Alice and I had been friends since preschool. She had light brown hair and big green eyes. Her parents worked a lot, like mine, so we were always left at aftercare together after school. We were typically the last 2 kids to get picked up. Naturally, we became pretty good friends because of it. Back then, and until around 6th grade, both of us were ignored by everybody else. We had the same classmates every year because there were only 3 schools in town, a preschool, an elementary through middle, and a high school. There were 26 of us back then, and with the loss of 2 students who moved away and the addition of 1 student who moved to Sherman from one county over, the group stayed the exact same throughout every year. Alice and I were typically regarded as weird, so we were left alone. But when 6th grade hit, the wonderful process that is puberty took place, and Alice got hot. To me, she was always pretty, but the breasts and makeup sold everybody else on it. And sure enough, as is the natural order of things, when she became hot, I was ignored. The dynamic duo was no more, at least beneath the surface. We still talked a lot, and she'd hang out with me on occasion. But the friendship we used to have, that was gone. She was assimilated into the popular crowd and became more and more like them every year, until we really didn't have anything in common anymore. Typically, us talking was her venting to me about Scott, the douchebag who moved into Sherman our junior year. He was attractive and new, and thus became the target of all the girls who were sick of the same old, same old. All Alice wanted these days was to get Scott's attention, and that was about the only thing that crossed her mind, I think. At least, that's all she cared to tell me about. In my solitude, my writing habit grew stronger. Although I often had the house to myself, the atmosphere there didn't inspire me. Being home reminded me of getting snaps from Alice complaining about Scott not paying her enough attention at Gage's bonfire, and my parents arguing. It was tough to find creativity in that environment. So, on my 17th birthday, which I spent alone because Alice was at a party, I decided to visit the one place in town I hadn't seen a million times, Deadbeats Drop. Not believing in ghosts made it easy to convince myself to go. It was a 20-minute drive from my house, followed by a 20-minute walk from the parking area. You'd lose reception a minute into the woods, and that was the best part. No distractions. No predictable messages from Alice. No staring at my phone hoping for notifications that wouldn't come. It quickly became my favorite place in town. Nearly every afternoon I wasn't working, I'd go there, sit in the grass against a tree, and write. But my peaceful routine eventually came to an end. I remember that day clearly. It was a warm April day in Vermont, around 60 degrees. I just finished my 7th period class, statistics. As a senior with only a month and a half of school left, I had little homework left to juggle with writing. I got into my car, a red 2001 Honda Accord. It wasn't anything special, but I bought it outright, and it got me where I needed to go. As soon as I closed the door, my phone vibrated softly. I looked down and saw exactly what I expected, a snap from Alice. I opened it uninterested. He's speaking with Abby again. Oh, sorry. Come on, Abby? Really? I'm not sure. She sent something back, but I wasn't interested. I glanced into the rear-view mirror, catching my blue eyes staring back at me, my short brown hair tucked under a blue beanie. With no one behind me, I slowly backed out. My phone vibrated again, then again. I drove to the stop sign and finally opened the messages. She is not even good-looking in the slightest. Sam, ally, I'm trying to drive. Oh. I put the phone down, then moved through the stop sign, cringing at how dull she was. Sometimes, I couldn't help but think about when we were kids and how much fun we used to have. She was honestly a completely different person. That Alice was gone, most likely forever. Sometimes, I felt like the only reason I still talked to her was because I had literally no one else to talk to, and she was better than nothing. My car didn't have Bluetooth or even a working auxiliary port, and the radio stations in town were terrible, so I listened to CDs. I put in the White Album, my favorite Beatles album that I listened to enough to drive Alice crazy, and drove up the winding road toward Deadbeats Drop. The drive was peaceful, as usual. The trees were just getting their leaves back, and the forest was coming alive again. The snow was gone, and the animals were coming back out. Occasionally, I'd spot a wood thrush fluttering by or a squirrel rummaging for food. When I got to the parking area, I left my phone in the car, as usual, since taking it into the woods was pointless anyway, and began my walk through the woods to the jump. I wore a maroon windbreaker, blue jeans, boots, and my blue beanie, with my journal in hand. Finally, I stepped into the clearing, emerging into the forbidden beauty of Deadbeats Drop. The sight never grew old. I sighed with relief, taking in the serene majesty of the lookout. Beyond the grassy hilltop, dotted sparingly with trees, was the river, humming gently 100 feet below. The soft dirt banks were lined with tall trees, swaying in the cool and nippy breeze. Around the river on all sides was mostly uncharted wilderness, with only a trail or two visible from my perch. To the west, on my left, was a waterfall, maybe 15 feet shorter than the jump. On top of the waterfall was more forest. If I climbed the tree I usually sat beneath, I could make out the water tower Clover, the next town over to the north. But today, I leaned against the tree, taking out my journal. I thumbed through the pages, finally reaching a blank one. I pulled a black pen from my jacket pocket and looked at the page. I closed my eyes and let my soul do the talking. Scott. Why Scott? I don't get it, ally. All you ever do is talk about Scott. What happened to us hanging out as kids? Pushing each other on the swing at aftercare? Biking around town on Saturdays and going fishing after church? It gnawed at me. I was used to her ignoring me, but every so often, the pain would resurface. Scott. What a jerk. He doesn't care about you or Abby or anyone. And you know it, too. Why do you just settle for that, ally? I sighed and opened my journal. I stared at the blank page for a while, pressing the back of my pen against the corner of my lip, waiting for some divine inspiration to strike. But it never did. That was fine. Sometimes it didn't come. I resigned myself to just taking in the beauty of the jump again. And that's when something completely unexpected happened. For the first time ever, after visiting this place since my 17th birthday, I heard someone coming through the trees. My heart froze, and I jumped up, startled by the sound. And then my mind was blown even more. A girl emerged from the tree line, her long, flowing blonde hair glowing in the sunlight and vibrant turquoise eyes, an intoxicating mix of sky blue and seafoam green. Her face was lightly freckled, and she had sharp, fox-like features. She wore a red and white flannel shirt, unbuttoned over a white tank top and skinny jeans. She gasped, startled to see me. Hey, I said, waving speechlessly. Hi, she replied, starting to smile. Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude on you. No, you're fine, I smiled back. Wow, I've never seen anyone else up here before. Yeah, me neither, she laughed. I was confused because I came here all the time, and if she visited frequently, I'd have seen her by now. But I knew it would only make me sound creepy to point that out. So, what brings you up here? Oh, and I'm Sam. Leona, she smiled warmly. And honestly, I come here to sing and play guitar because it's private and no one's listening. I hadn't even noticed the guitar case in her hand. Oh, cool. Sorry if I'm ruining your privacy, I said, scratching the back of my head. No, you're not. Not at all. I'm just surprised to see someone else here. Sorry if this is weird, but how often do you come out here? Because I'm here more often than I'd like to admit, and I've never seen you, I chuckled. I mean, I don't come out here all the time, she said. Probably once or twice a month. But still, I thought I was the only person not too scared to visit this place. Nah, I don't believe in ghosts, I shrugged. Me neither, she laughed dryly. What surprised me even more than seeing her here was that I'd never seen her before. She couldn't possibly be from Sherman, unless she was homeschooled and kept hidden away. Are you from Sherman? I asked. I've never seen you around. No, I'm from Clover. Wow, that's a bit of a drive. Yeah, that's why I don't come here often. But it's worth it. Sucks this place has such a bad reputation. It's gorgeous. Agreed, I nodded. Well, you mentioned you come here a lot, but you didn't say why, she asked with a curious smile. So, what brings you to Deadbeats Drop? I felt awkward admitting it. I just come here to write. Write? Write what? All kinds of stuff. Stories, prose, poems. Mostly poems. Ooh, neat. She grinned excitedly, and my heart fluttered at the sight. Let me read one. Only if you play me a song first. Ah, proposing a trade, are we? She said, her eyes challenging me. Well, I accept your offer. I'm not that good, though, she admitted, her cheeks turning rosy, making my heart soar. Ah, I doubt that, I replied. I was kidding, though. You don't have to. No, it's cool, she assured me, walking over to a rock and sitting on it, before opening her case and pulling out a dark brown acoustic guitar. She took a deep breath, and then her fingers began to strum the strings. I don't mean to sound cliché, but when she started to sing, it completely captivated me. It was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I stared off into space, taking it all in, the sunlight on my skin, the waterfall and river babbling soothingly in the background. I was totally lost in the moment. Her voice was high and light, yet womanly. At some parts of the song, her voice would get soft and airy, while at other parts, she sang powerfully and loud. Her emotion saturated the music, giving me goosebumps. It was an incredible performance to deliver to a total stranger, but her bold first impression paid off. I was completely awestruck and couldn't hide it on my face. When she finished singing, she gently ended the song with a few more strums of her guitar, then smiled at me nervously. In that moment, all I felt was limerence. "Oh no," she giggled. "Why do you look so baffled? Was it bad?" No. I shook my head, still processing what I just heard. Not at all. Just, wow. It was absolutely phenomenal. Like I was in a trance. Ah! She shrank back, noticeably embarrassed. No, it wasn't. What do you mean? I laughed. That was incredible, Leona. I felt like I was high or something. What was that song called? I Know, by Fiona Apple. It's meant for a piano, but I think it sounds pretty good on the guitar, she said. Pretty good. I chuckled. Leona, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Okay, she blushed. Your turn. Let's hear a poem, Sam. Well, see, you're lucky. With singing, you can just do it, and if it's good, anyone can tell. It can be about anything, really, and if it sounds nice, it's something you can share. But with writing, it's different. Good poems are deep, and sharing them feels weird, you know? Oh, I see. Not holding up your end of the deal, she teased. Well, don't sweat it. No. I scratched my head awkwardly. I said I'd show you a poem. Do you want to hear the silly poem I wrote about a sock in junior year? I was trying to stay awake in class and just jotted it down. I chuckled. Wow! I play that for you, and you read me a poem about a sock, she teased again. No! I laughed, embarrassed. I'm kidding, she grinned. Yeah, let's hear it, Sam. All right, it's called Sock. Silently perching atop the shelf, lucidly worn and torn, bequeaths to me a subtle help, foot comfort in the morn. Stupid, right? Oh my God, she laughed. Wow. I mean, it sounds good though. Solid meter, well-executed slant rhyme. Well, thanks, I grinned, surprised she looked that deeply at it. We spent the rest of the day together, talking until sunset. She played guitar and sang some more, and when I felt comfortable enough, I showed her a couple of my real poems. As it got dark, we agreed it was time to leave. So, Leona, will I get to see you again? I asked. She thought for a moment. May 5th, she winked. Be here. Sounds good. I smiled back, more excited than I let on. With that, we parted ways. She mentioned another parking spot on the other side of the jump closer to Clover, where her car was, so I didn't walk back with her. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat. It was dark, but the moon was high in the sky over the lush wilderness. The temperature had dropped to about 40 degrees, so I turned on the heat. Thinking of Leona's face made my heart pound. Who was that? I was floored. Where'd she come from? I mean, wow. I can't believe that happened. I drove home listening to the country station, which I usually didn't do, but tonight I felt upbeat. When I got home, it was just past 8 o'clock. My parents weren't home yet, which was no surprise. I went into the kitchen and heated up some chicken and rice. Then I sat at the table, taking out my phone. I had a few messages from Alice. Did you see Scott's story? She's all over him. Did you do Doc Pinkman's homework yet? Sam, Alice, can you call? She read the message, and within 2 minutes, my phone was ringing. Hey! I greeted with an enthusiasm she hadn't heard from me in a while. Whoa, you're cheery. Her smooth, alto voice came through the phone. You won't believe this. You will not believe this, Ally. What? What? She sounded annoyed by my high-strung tone. I went up to Deadbeats Drop today, like usual. But for the first time ever, I ran into someone up there. Was it a ghost? No, it was a girl. A gorgeous girl. A girl. You met a girl at Deadbeats Drop. Yeah, her name was Leona. I plugged in my headphones, then sat down, cutting through the chicken breast with my fork. Ally, she was the prettiest girl I've ever seen in my life. Wavy blonde hair, these glowing turquoise eyes. And she could sing. Ally was quiet for a moment. Kinda weird you met her up there. Well, yeah, I've never met anyone there before. But that's not the point. I did meet her. You think she's up to something? I don't know why else she'd be up there. I rolled my eyes. No. Ally, she was up there to play guitar by herself, just like I go up there to write by myself. I go up there a lot, and I'm not up to something. But you said she was hot, right? Well, yeah. So, not to sound rude, but you going up there makes sense. But why would she? If she's as hot as you say, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Come on, you know what I mean, Sam. That it makes sense for a deadbeat like me to sit out there alone, but not for someone who's attractive? Okay, don't make it sound like that. How else did you mean it? Look, just chill, okay? She exclaimed. Sam, all I meant was, you're not exactly Mr. Popular. You've told me that you go up there a lot because you have nothing better to do. If she's from around here and attractive, I'm sure she's driving all the boys crazy. She probably has a lot else to do. So, why would she be at Deadbeats Drop? Where the loners go. It doesn't add up. She went up there to play guitar. She wanted a place to be alone, to practice. It's not complicated. I guess. I sat there for a moment, wondering why she couldn't just be happy for me. Every time we talked, she either argued with me or made me feel dumb. What was even the point of talking to her? I never felt fulfilled or happy. I never felt like I was talking to a friend. After spending just one afternoon with Leona, I already felt closer to her than I had to Alice in years. You know what, Ally? I think I gotta go. Ah, come on, Sam, she replied, but I responded, every time I tell you good news, you downplay it and make it sound stupid. It sucks you can't be happy for your friend when I found someone I actually enjoyed talking to. She was silent for a second. You don't enjoy talking to me? I paused. No, not really. All you ever talk about is Scott. I'm tired of it. I've already told you, Scott is a jerk who doesn't deserve the kindness you give him. But you never listen. You let him walk all over you, again and again, then come crying to me like it's the first time it happened. All you ever say is Scott this and Scott that. I don't care about Scott. I don't want to hear about Scott. If I wanted to know that much about Scott, I'd talk to him. You and I haven't had a real conversation since 6th grade. To my shock, I thought I could hear her sniffling. Oh, well, if that's how you feel then, I guess I gotta go too. Come on, Ally. Don't make this my fault. Whatever, Sam. Glad you found somebody you like talking to. She hung up on me. I sat there, feeling mixed emotions. Maybe what I said was harsh. There was probably a more tactful way I could have expressed it. But then again, why should I feel guilty? Besides being a little rude, I didn't do anything wrong. I had every right to feel how I did. If Alice cared about me, I sure couldn't tell. She never supported me, never thanked me, never acknowledged our friendship. She treated me like her bedroom drywall, something she could vent to before walking away and shutting the lights off. And I was sick of it. I was so used to it. I didn't even realize how bad of a friend she was. But talking to Leona made me realize it. I felt happier and more alive in those couple of hours than I'd felt since I was 12. And sure enough, over the next few days, I didn't talk with Alice at all. We saw each other around school, but we didn't acknowledge one another. And guess what? My life was no different. In fact, it even felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I mean, don't get me wrong. I missed her by instinct. But then I'd remind myself that the Alice I was missing had been gone for years. The day I met Leona was April 26th, and I counted down the days until May 5th. As excited as I was, some part of me felt disappointment was inevitable. That I'd sit out there all day waiting for her, and she'd never show. Even worse, May 5th was a Saturday, so I had no idea when she planned to arrive. I spent my days either dreaming of Leona at work or sitting at the jump, thinking about her. Finally, May 5th arrived. I woke up that morning in a cold sweat. As much as I wanted to believe she'd come, deep down I just knew she wouldn't. I tried to imagine her stepping into the clearing, seeing her beautiful eyes again, hearing her intoxicating voice. But all I could envision was the hours ticking by, waiting for her to arrive, and finally sulking back to my car at dusk, alone and disappointed as always. I arrived at the jump around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I brought a basket with sandwiches and fruit and 2 bottles of sweet tea. It might have been a bit much, but her first impression really stuck with me. I figured I'd be bold too. I leaned against a tree, taking out my pocket knife, cutting up an apple and eating it casually. When I finished, I added more to a story I was working on. Then, around 3 o'clock, my writing was interrupted. Against all odds, I heard someone walking up the hill. My palms were clammy and my heart raced. I could barely breathe, staring in the direction of the sound. She stepped out of the trees. I met her mesmerizing turquoise eyes, her soft, smiling pink lips, her sun-kissed face. Today, she wore a pink flannel and once again carried her guitar case. "Hey, Sam," she smiled. "Hey, Leona." I grinned. My entire body was alight with thrill and relief. She came over and sat next to me, and I breathed in her perfume, letting out an ecstatic sigh. "So, I brought us some lunch." I smiled, opening the picnic basket. "I got sandwiches and fruit. There are ham and cheese, turkey with mayo, and peanut butter and jelly. And then some apples and bananas." "Ah, Sam," she smiled at me. "You brought me lunch." "Yeah, and..." I reached into the basket. "Here." I handed her a bottle of sweet tea. "Hope you like sweet tea. This is so thoughtful." "Ah, really? It was nothing." We spent the day together, talking, laughing, sharing stories about our lives. I told her about Alice, how we'd been inseparable from preschool until 6th grade, and how she became popular and started to write me off. I even told her about the fight we did over a week ago and how we hadn't talked since. I shared about my parents, how they were mostly never around, and how I spent my time either working at Shaw's with people twice my age or writing at Deadbeats Drop. She told me that Clover was a lot like Sherman, with a slightly bigger population of 6,000 and a similar situation with only one high school. She said she was fairly popular, but didn't really like her classmates. She felt they were fake, with materialistic priorities, and she had no one to really talk to beyond the surface level. Guys were all over her, treating her like a trophy they were competing to win, but none took the time to get to know her. Her home life was similar to mine. She was an only child, and her family was mostly never around. But her father was Clover's chief of police and could be really controlling, which added stress to her life. Still, the more we talked, the more I realized how similar our lives were. She started playing guitar and singing when she was 10, as something to do when she was bored and alone at home. At first, I wondered if she could really relate to loneliness. Maybe she didn't spend a lot of time with people, but unlike me, it was her choice. She was swimming in attention, invited to parties, approached by classmates. She didn't have to spend a single weekend alone if she didn't want to. But as she explained, I realized how unfulfilling her situation was too. She was surrounded by people who didn't care about her, just wanted her for her looks, and no one tried or cared to understand her. I began to really sympathize with her. That had to be isolating in its own way. We stayed until dark. This time, before she left, she did something that surprised me. "Well, Sam," she smiled, "it was fun. Until next time, May 13th. I nodded. "Can't wait." She looked at me for a moment. Then she hugged me, her soft arms wrapped around me, and I breathed in her scent, feeling her chest pressed against mine. I was paralyzed with butterflies. "Thanks for getting to know me, Sam," she whispered softly, her warm breath tickling my ear. "Of course, Leona," I whispered back, awestruck. She leaned back and then softly kissed my cheek. She looked immediately embarrassed, her cheeks rosy as I stared at her in wordless amazement, probably looking like a total idiot. Then she turned and walked off into the woods. "Next Sunday," she called again. "Next Sunday," I replied, my heart racing. "Have a nice night, Sam," the old lady said as she walked off to her car. "You too, ma'am," I called back, standing behind the cash register. It was Saturday, May 12th, a week since I'd last seen Leona. I was on the closing shift at Shaw's and couldn't wait to get off work. All night, all I could think about was Leona. Tomorrow, I was determined to get her number. Then we could talk all the time. I glanced at my watch. 8:52 p.m. Just 8 more minutes, and I could start the closing procedures. Then, to my surprise, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. I scanned the area for my manager, Luther. Seeing he was nowhere in sight, I pulled out my phone, wondering who had sent me a message. It was a Snapchat message from Alice. Wow, I thought, how bizarre. We hadn't spoken since that phone call. It had been about 3 weeks. At around 10 o'clock, I finally clocked out and walked through the chilly night to my red Accord in the starlit parking lot. I climbed inside, turned on the heat, and tapped the message, surprised by how nervous I was. "Sam, I miss you." This shocked me. I couldn't believe she even noticed I was gone. "Hey, Ally, I miss you too." I went to shift the gear to drive, but she had already responded. Surprised, I read the next message. "Can we hang out tomorrow? It's been way too long." "Ah, sorry, Ally. I'm meeting Leona tomorrow. Maybe Monday." "Oh, all right. Sure." "Hey," I replied. "Want to call tonight?" "Okay." I drove home. Finally, I slid out of my work clothes, took a hot shower, and crawled into bed, lying beneath the warm covers. I called Alice, and for the first time in weeks, I heard her voice outside of her Snapchat story. "Hey, Sam." "Ally." I smiled, and it actually comforted me to hear from her again. "I've missed you." "You too." Jerk, making me message you first. I chuckled. "Yeah, sorry. So, how's life been, Ally?" Not much to talk about, but some good news." "Yeah, I gave up on Scott." What? You did? Yeah, you. We're right, Sam, she sighed. Scott is a jerk. He really is. The other night, I found him with Elise at Jack's party in his parents' bedroom. Not even Abby. Wow. I laughed. Sounds like Scott. Yeah. So, how's everything going for you? And how are things with Leona? It's going great. Honestly, things are going great for me. I know I've only hung out with her twice, but when I'm with her, I just feel. Understood. I don't know. It's really something. I can't wait to see her tomorrow. I basically spend all my time just looking forward to the next time I see her. I chuckled. Wow, she replied. She's really something, huh? Yeah, she really is. Well, get a picture of her for me next time. So I know you're not making it up. She smiled weakly. Oh, all right. I laughed. Sure. Why have you only seen her twice? Is she really busy or something? I don't know. I just never asked to meet her anywhere besides Deadbeats Drop. She tells me the next time she's going, and then I meet her there. But tomorrow, I'm going to try to get her number so we can talk more. Well, that's awesome, Sam. I'm glad it's working out for you. Me too, Ally. Me too. I haven't been this happy in a while. Ally didn't say anything for a moment. Sam, remember when we were 9 and you caught that walleye? It was absolutely huge. Yeah, I laughed. That thing was like 5 feet long, and we cooked it up for supper. We just sat out there by the river all night, telling each other ghost stories and stuff. I miss that. You do? Yeah. I mean, that was fun. We should do something like that again sometime. You and me go camping. I was speechless. Yeah, I mean, unless you think it'd be weird or something. Nah, Ally, I'd totally love to do that. But wouldn't you be busy at a party or something? No, I won't be. Maybe next weekend. Maybe. I'll see when Leona wants to meet next, okay? Oh, all right. Cool. Her tone changed. You good, Ally? Yeah. The rest of the night, we talked casually. I won't lie, it was awesome hearing from her again. It reminded me how much she meant to me, that even though she was different now, she was still, after all, my best friend. The next day, I excitedly drove up to Deadbeats Drop, blasting Led Zeppelin in my car. I couldn't believe that so many people were afraid of that place, and yet, for me, it was where I felt more alive than anywhere else. When I got there, this time, Leona was waiting for me. When she saw me, she ran up and hugged me. Once again, I was hit with butterflies. We talked for a while, when finally, I mustered up the courage to ask, Hey, Leona, do you think that maybe I could get your number? Or like, your social media or something? I don't have social media, she admitted. My dad's pretty protective. And my number. She seemed to be debating it, but then she frowned. I don't think it'd be a good idea. I'm sorry, Sam. Really? I wish I could. Oh, well, I get it. Seriously, don't sweat it. We can keep meeting here, though, she smiled. Okay. I smiled back. Well, if not that, can I get a picture of us together? Maybe this sounds creepy, but when we don't see each other for a while, I sort of wish I at least had a picture of you to look at. Ah, she blushed. Sam, I just don't like taking pictures of myself. Please, Leona? Ugh. Not today. My makeup's horrible. No, it's not. I chuckled. You look great, Leona. Sam, she whispered. To my surprise, she extended her hand, cupping my cheek. My body was paralyzed. Her soft fingers caressed my face as her mesmerizing turquoise eyes stole my breath. I don't mean to be so dodgy. Can I make up for it with a kiss? With what? I stammered. She smirked. Then her eyes shut and she leaned in, pressing her soft lips against mine. I could hardly breathe, if I'm being honest. All throughout my life, I heard so much about things like true love's kiss, fireworks, sparks, blah, blah, blah. But the two girls I'd ever kissed felt nothing like that. Me and Alice kissed in first grade. We didn't even know what we were doing, just saw it on TV and tried it out. And then in 8th grade, I kissed my first girlfriend, though I didn't really feel anything for her and only agreed to date her because I thought it might be fulfilling. This kiss, however, was incomparably different. It left me spellbound, completely absorbed in the moment. It was more than just two people's lips touching. It was a magical, electrical connection. I don't even want to know how cringy my expression was when she leaned back. You kissed. Yeah. Sorry, she giggled. Don't apologize. I chortled. I exhaled. It's okay, Leona. The thing about your dad and stuff. It's okay. We'll just keep meeting here. She looked more touched by that than I expected. Yay, she breathed. For the next 2 months, we saw each other almost every weekend. Sadly, Ally and I never got around to camping. I suggested meeting up with Leona and Clover, but she reminded me that her father was the chief of police, and if a cop saw her with me, he'd tell her dad. Then we'd probably never see each other again. Not wanting to risk that, I was okay with just meeting at the jump. Still, when I felt lonely, I'd listen to the recording I'd secretly taken of her while she was singing, because she was too shy to let me film her openly. By the end of July, we were dating, though I don't think Ally believed me that she was real, since Leona wouldn't let me take a picture of her. Every time I offered Ally to come out to Deadbeats Drop to meet her, she said she didn't want anything to do with that place. While seeing Leona was amazing, she seemed to grow increasingly depressed with each visit. She told me more about her controlling father and how suffocated she felt. She sometimes said that I was the only good thing in her life. It broke my heart, but also warmed it a bit. How could I be lucky enough to be the one who was there for her? I felt honored to be the one to cheer her up. It was now July 18th, a Wednesday, and I was at Deadbeats Drop writing a poem. I was scheduled to meet Leona again that Friday. Around 6 o'clock, I heard someone coming up the path. For a moment, I wondered if it was Leona, but when a stranger appeared, I instantly felt on edge. "Oh," the woman gasped. She seemed to be in her early 30s, with tan skin, dark hair, and eyes. "I'm sorry if I scared you." I apologized. No, my bad," she laughed awkwardly. "I just didn't expect to see anyone up here." "Me either. So, what brings you up here?" "Oh, well. Does the name Carly Brown sound familiar to you?" "Carly Brown. Kind of. She committed suicide here 10 years ago. 10 years ago today. Actually, I'm her sister." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." "It's okay." She sat down on a rock. "Yep, 10 years ago today, Carly took her life here. I guess I was just coming out here to pay my respects. After all, that grave of hers is empty. Her body was never found. So, this is the last place she ever was. I don't know what to say. I confessed. I'm just so sorry that happened. Yeah. You know, it's like they say. You learn to accept it, but you never really get over it. I could have been a much better sister to her. I really neglected her back then. Didn't realize it until it was too late. Hey, I tried to console her, noticing she needed someone to talk to. It's not your fault. Maybe not. But maybe there was something I could have done. You know? Sorry. I'm sorry. She sighed awkwardly. None of this is your problem. You probably just came up here to be alone. No, it's fine. If you need to talk about anything, I've got nowhere else to be. Well, I just... She was clearly troubled and couldn't hide it on her face. What is it? Look, I'm sorry to be dropping all this on you. There's something the papers never published about Carly, and sometimes it just really bothers me. The words made me uncomfortable. What is it? She used to come here to meet somebody, she revealed. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I can't remember her name now. It was so long ago. All I remember is that she'd come out here to visit with someone. Said that she was her only friend. I'd always ask her why she never had her friend over, but she'd tell me her friend's dad wouldn't be okay with it or something. It never made a lot of sense to me. She kept inviting me out here to meet her, and finally, one day, after she'd left, something just didn't feel right. I decided I'd come out here to meet her friend. I got to the parking grounds and saw Carly's car and walked the trail all the way up here to the jump. But she seemed to tremble. What? I asked calmly. She was talking, but there was nobody there. What? I whispered. She was having a full conversation with no one. My body was covered in goosebumps. Yeah, the woman nodded. I know. I was terrified too. I thought that maybe I could hear another voice, but there was definitely no one there besides Carly. I walked out of the tree line, and Carly yelled, "Hey, where are you going?" Then she turned around and told me I scared her friend off. But nobody ran away. Nobody left. There was no one there besides Carly and me. I didn't even know what to say. I told our mom about it, but she didn't believe me. She was sure I just missed a girl somehow. And then, sure enough, one day, Carly came out here to meet her friend and disappeared. Do you think? She was like, I don't know. Crazy, she asked. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe she was doing drugs. I really don't know. But with the rumors about this place, and then that happening, listen, something about this place just isn't right. I know it's pretty, and that out here, you get to be alone. Carly used to say all that stuff. But there's something evil out here. And that's why Carly and so many people before her took their lives here. I just know it after what I saw that day. I'm surprised that after seeing that, you'd come out here by yourself. Well, I'm not totally alone, she admitted. My husband's in the car. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, he's supposed to come up here looking for me. But I just wanted some alone time with Carly on the 10th anniversary of her death. Or disappearance or whatever. Well, I'll give you some alone time. I started to walk away, but she called, Hey, just, be careful coming up here. All right. Uh-huh. I nodded. I will. Thanks. Ever since that night, Deadbeats Drop, for the first time ever, creeped me out. When I got home, I sat at my desk and Googled Carly Brown suicide. Some articles came up, all about how she had simply disappeared after coming out here. None of them mentioned her meeting a friend except one, which included a testimony from her sister stating she'd been visiting someone at the jump. Police searched for suspects but found nothing. The more I looked into it, the more I realized how mysterious her death was. For the most part, she didn't seem very depressed. No one saw it coming. And then one day, she simply disappeared, and it was ruled a suicide. She didn't have many friends, and her family felt responsible for not giving her enough attention, but she didn't seem suicidal to anyone. Out of curiosity, I decided to look into the history of Deadbeats Drop. Many of the deaths were rumors, some proven untrue, and others plausible. The Native American story was folklore, impossible to validate. But then I looked into Edward Bond's death. Unlike the popular legend, he wasn't cornered by law enforcement on the hill. Police simply found his body at the base of it on the riverbed and discovered that he was a draft dodger from South Florida when they identified him. When his corpse turned up in the paper, numerous townspeople explained that they'd seen him around for a couple of months. Though his mission to escape conscription was unknown to them, when he first arrived in town, he seemed to be in a hurry. Then, mysteriously, he settled down and didn't leave. He even got a job as a woodcutter, and his employer said he didn't seem suicidal at all. Even though it was assumed the pressures of getting caught and sent to prison or Vietnam eventually drove him over the edge, he wasn't close to getting caught. And he didn't show suicidal tendencies to anyone who interacted with him. In 1986, I delved into the death of Matthew May. Finding detailed information about him proved challenging, but to my astonishment, his story mirrored Carly's. Numerous articles portrayed him as lonely and profoundly depressed, yet one piece revealed a police investigation suggesting his death might have been a homicide. Perhaps he was pushed. A close friend mentioned that Matthew had been seeing a girl named Leona. The police searched for Leona in Sherman and surrounding towns, but the only girl they found didn't match the description: a young woman with blonde hair and light eyes. Reading that filled me with indescribable terror. The odds seemed impossible. It couldn't be a coincidence. The article stated that they were dating, yet Matthew's friend never met her, and she only met Matthew at Deadbeats Drop. Just like my Leona, Matthew's story, Carly's story, they were identical to mine. I was meeting a Leona at Deadbeats Drop who refused to meet me anywhere else. She resembled the girl in Matthew May's homicide investigation, blonde hair, light eyes. Carly's sister had also told me that Leona mentioned a controlling father, restricting her to meeting at Deadbeats Drop. Still, she was Leona, my girlfriend, the girl I constantly thought about. She sang to me, read my poetry, and alleviated my dull, meaningless life. How could she be a monster or some evil spirit? It seemed impossible. I would have laughed if it wasn't so distressing and unsettling. On Friday after school, I encountered Alice before heading to the forest. "Hey, weirdo," she smiled, flicking her straight brown hair away from her face, her big green eyes fixed on me. "You going to your creepy little hill?" "Ally," I said with unusual seriousness, which she immediately noticed. "Listen, if I don't text you in 2 hours, send the police to Deadbeats Drop, okay?" "Whoa, what? Sam, what are you talking about?" "I can't explain it right now. I'll tell you everything tonight. You were right, Ally. There's something wrong with Leona. I should have listened to you." "What do you mean, Sam? You're not thinking about jumping, are you?" "No, I'm not suicidal, Ally." I grabbed her shoulders, looking into her eyes. "If you find my body at the base of that hill, it wasn't a suicide, okay?" "Sam, you're scaring me." "Ally," I hugged her. "It'll be okay. I'll call you tonight." I ran off, got in my car, and drove away. She watched me the whole time until I left the parking lot, staring at me like it was the last time she'd ever see me. As I drove to Deadbeats Drop, I was overwhelmed by fear. I didn't believe in ghosts, but the odds. How could all these deaths align so precisely with my situation? It defied logic. Why did Edward, Matthew, and Carly really die? Did they kill themselves? Were they pushed or manipulated into jumping? I had no answers. All I knew was that Leona's story and their deaths made no sense, and whatever happened to them was happening to me. I also felt sorrow and betrayal. How could my beautiful Leona be trying to kill me? Could she really be a threat? The girl I'd shared so many moments with, discussing poetry and listening to her sing. How could it be? Part of me felt embarrassed, thinking this must be a misunderstanding. Another part felt angry for being deceived. I needed to find out what Leona was, if she was a spirit, or if this was all a bizarre conspiracy. I arrived at Deadbeats Drop. Nervously, I stepped out of my car and into the forest. The trail that once brought me joy now filled me with dread. When I reached the hilltop, I saw Leona through the trees. Slowly, I took out my phone, opened the camera, and saw nothing. My heart froze. I placed my phone on a branch, started recording, and approached the clearing. Leona looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Sam," she whimpered, collapsing into my arms. "My father found out about me coming here. He won't let me come back." I was heartbroken, terrified, and still in love with her. "What do you mean?" "He asked where I've been," she sniffled, her red eyes locked with mine. I had no more excuses. He's probably got half the Clover police looking for me. "What does this mean for us?" She was silent. "We can't see each other anymore. Despite everything, this crushed me." "Leona, no." "Sam," her tone changed. "Let's end it. Let's kill ourselves together. I don't want to live without you. What else do you have? Alice? Your parents? Let's die together, hand in hand, my love." I imagined Matthew May, Edward, and Carly in the same situation, giving in to her. But I had to keep the act up. I was in love with her. "I never want to lose you, Leona." "Come on, love." She kissed me. "Together. We'll die together." We walked to the ledge, looking out over the river. Leona's fingers curled around mine. I took a deep breath. "Is this what you told Matthew, Edward, and Carly?" She froze, turning to me. "What?" "I know about their deaths, Leona. What really happened? Why do you do this?" "What are you talking about, Sam?" I sighed and pushed her off the cliff. For a moment, her body fell. Then she vanished into thin air. I stood there, bewildered. I realized she was a siren, preying on loneliness, feeding on souls when they jumped. Maybe she was an avenging spirit. One thing was certain. She'd never claim another victim. I retrieved my phone, the encounter recorded. Her voice was audible. I took it to the police. They found no signs of tampering. And though they didn't fully believe me, the legend of Leona the Siren began. If anyone experienced what I did, they'd understand the gravity of their situation. At least, that was my hope. They published a newspaper article about it. And while I knew I'd get mocked for it, being the town deadbeat and all, I figured maybe I could save a life this way. The rest of the summer felt strange without my lonely perch to write on. But you know what? It was all right, because Alice and I had plenty of camping time and catching up to do.